Hello everybody and welcome to Parksbros. It's Drew here, and today we're going to be heading all the way to Tampa, Florida to check out one of the most iconic rides at Busch Gardens Tampa, Cheetah Hunt, in our full in-depth review. Cheetah Hunt is an Intamin multi-launch coaster that originally opened on May 27th, 2011 at Busch Gardens Tampa in Tampa, Florida. This ride features 3 separate launches using LSM systems. With a max height of 102 feet and a 130-foot drop, the top speed gets up to 60 miles an hour, just as fast as a Cheetah. This ride is fairly long too, with a full track length of 4,429 feet, and it does feature one inversion, a heartline roll. Now that we know a little bit about this ride, let's figure out how to get there. Once you enter Busch Gardens Tampa, you're going to want to follow that main path through some of the shops and make the first right that you can. From here, you'll go past some alligators as well as finally see parts of Cheetah Hunt in its tree-like structure overhead. Keep following that path as you'll actually pass by a cheetah exhibit as you see the second and first launches in that area. From there, you'll go underneath parts of the track, make a left-hand turn, and that's where the entrance is going to be. From this point, you're going to want to put all of your loose articles in the lockers that they have for this ride, which do cost some money, just so you know. And from there, you'll enter into the queue line. This queue line isn't really anything special outside of little bits of theming here and there, as well as a pretty dang cool statue of a cheetah, before encountering some switchbacks as you're heading up a ramp, and some themed lighting as well as some extra theming on every wall. Eventually you'll get up to the quite open feeling enclosed station, which is kind of funny to say, and be able to hop on ride. So now let's talk about what these seats are like. These trains feature 2 seats per row in 8 separate rows, making there 16 seats per train. And this ride actually loads 2 trains at the same time, as the second train out of those 2 will actually wait on one of the blocks before the first launch, but we'll get into that later. Something you'll also notice is the stadium-styled seating, so every second row in the individual car will be sat a little bit higher to try and give you a better view of what's in front of you. Now let's talk about the seats themselves. As you sit down in this pretty dang cool looking cheetah styled train, you'll notice that this seat actually has some head support as well as back support all the way down, and kind of a flat seat with multiple prongs sticking out on the sides and insides of your legs. From here, you'll actually pull the over the shoulder restraint down, which has quite hard bars that come down from your ears and down towards your waist with a little bit of padding on there. There is a lap bar portion that attaches to that will go around your hips and does actually have some handlebars you can hold on to. But to be completely honest, this is kind of clunky, and we'll talk about that more in the future. It's kind of the in-between seat of when it was completely unergonomic into the more ergonomic seats we see today, and for some people might be a little awkward, especially with how small the footwells seem to be. But with that all said, let's launch out that station. If you're in the first train of the 2 in the station, you'll start to roll out fairly slow as you end up going underneath a little bit of a tunnel before randomly getting a kick forward. And every time I've ridden this ride, it did surprise me with that little punch that it gives you out of nowhere. And just know, if you're in that secondary train, you'll see the first train go out in front of you, and then you'll actually wait just before that tunnel pretty much before experiencing that launch yourself. This launch is just above that bridge that you went under while walking to the ride, and is actually pretty dang well themed, looking like some ruins as you start to turn towards the left. Now this launch is not very fast at all. It maybe gets you up to 20 miles an hour at first, and after that immediate kick, you feel the train slow quite significantly. This is when you start to dive down, twisting towards the left and picking up quite a bit of speed. You go underneath some of the pathways above and hit the first major launch of the ride. This is in a pretty famous trench section of the ride, which is just really cool from off-ride as well, before being vaulted up into the highest point of the ride, 102 feet. This launch is fairly gradual, especially compared to that first little boost at the beginning, but once it picks up that speed, it doesn't let up, and it's really really awesome feeling. You do experience quite a lot of positive G's going up into this tree-like element, and as it levels out at the top, you may get a little bit of airtime if you're near the front of the train. From here, you'll get this amazing view of the rest of the park, probably one of the best views in the park in general, as you twist towards the right in this weird half helix before twisting to the left, doing the same type of movement, which gives you a full 360 of the park as well as the surrounding Tampa area. From this point though, you dive down that 130-foot drop into another trench, which if you're towards the back of the train, you get some amazing ejector airtime pretty much out of nowhere. And this is easily one of the more intense moments of the ride as you dive back into a trench, and there's even some hand chopper moments above. From here, you start to twist upwards and over the actual gondola ride at the park, which is a really cool moment, before diving underneath another path. This is when you start to make a more sharp right-hand turn that may give you a little bit of positive G's before perfectly transitioning into that heartline roll, which gives an amazing amount of hang time, making it feel like you're just going to fall towards the ground while upside down. This is when I want to talk about those restraints a little bit more, just because if you are experiencing some of those lateral forces that will occur during these twisting moments, you may experience a little bit of head banging if the restraint sits right next to your ears. And to be honest, this is not the worst moment of that on the ride. However, it is the first moment that I think it is noticeable. Following this really graceful inversion, you do hit a little bit of a brake run before twisting downward and to the right with a little bit of lateral force, especially at the beginning, into one of the coolest moments of the entire ride. You flatten out over this running river, which creates this natural looking gorge that you end up following. There is a little bit of straight track here, so nothing too special, but it gives you an idea of what everything looks like before twisting to the right in a longer turn and then going crazy. As the head choppers surround you, you end up twisting to the left and then the right and then the left and then the right and then the left again, which gives some pretty harsh lateral forces. And I will say this is a moment that can be really beloved, but also not so much at the same time, depending on how you are. The switch ups in lateral forces are really cool, as well as the scenery around you, but the restraints do hinder it just a little bit. At the end of this, you'll turn to the right and actually encounter yet another launch, the final one on the coaster, that sends you directly into a camelback airtime hill, with the front end of it being amazing in the front of the train and the latter half of it being amazing towards the back, both giving pretty intense ejector airtime seemingly out of nowhere. You'll calmly start to twist to the right a little bit before twisting to the left and doing another off-axis airtime hill, this one a little more punchy than the first one in the ride, going downwards just a bit and twisting to the left into another trench. From this point, you'll see that tree-like structure directly in front of you as you start to twist to the right, but it feels like a fake out moment, as the moment you hit that apex of that hill, you immediately get thrown into a 90-degree left-hand turn, which just pushes you into the restraint on the right, even as someone who's a little bit taller. It's by far the most jarring part of the ride, as well as the most forceful in terms of lateral forces, but it leads you directly into the final brake run before you twist to the right again, directly into that station. From here, you'll hop off the ride to the left-hand side, go down some stairs, and through the gift shop underneath the station, where you can say hello to the gift shop supports. Of course, don't forget your belongings in the lockers, unless you want to go around for round 2, which I think is a genuine question you should ask. So now let's talk about my personal thoughts and feelings on the ride itself. This coaster to me is an amazing ride all around. I can't lie about that. And I think it's the perfect first thrill coaster for a lot of people. It has some really exciting moments with a 60-mile-an-hour launch, as well as that inversion. However, it's not nearly as intense as a lot of the other rides in the park. I'm not saying it's not intense, because it definitely is. But if you're looking for a coaster after Scorpion, it's probably the best next step. Moving on from that intensity conversation, which we'll get back to in a little bit, this ride is genuinely just enjoyable. It reminds me a lot of Manta at SeaWorld San Diego, as of course that is the closest SeaWorld park to me, and it's super fun and re-rideable. It brings some fun, intense moments, as well as less intense moments that just make it a little bit more varied than other rides in the park. But as you could probably tell, I do have a gripe with the restraints. It's not the biggest one, honestly. I just know for a lot of of other people, it is a much more concerning issue with the ride. The layout is very interesting to me though, because it does have some amazing high points, but also for most of it feels like it doesn't know where it's going. It meanders a lot, not in the worst way obviously, but it does feel like there are peaks and valleys throughout this ride outside of physically. It feels like it has a really exciting moment and then a less exciting moment immediately after, followed by a more exciting moment and then a less exciting moment after, which to be honest is a little bit more of an issue that I have with the ride personally, because something amazing happens and then something that's a little bit boring happens thereafter. Right when it picks up its steam every single time, it feels to lose it a bit. Now, of course, this ride overall I think is still very exciting and I think is honestly one of the best rides at the park, but when this ride really shines, it definitely does in the best way. That Heartline roll, one of the best Heartline rolls out there, and a lot of the trench moments are really cool. There's lots of hand choppers all over the place, and those launches are always a nice surprise. This ride is really fun overall though, and pretty dang graceful throughout the layout, although in my mind it doesn't make the most sense. But with all that said, let's go over my favorite and least favorite moments on the ride, as well as seats, before moving on to my ratings. So let's start out with those seats. My least favorite has definitely got to be like row 4 or so, in either seat to be honest. And my favorite honestly is in that front right seat. It's really amazing and you get some unexpected ejector airtime on a lot of those moments in the ride. Now in terms of moments, my least favorite moment is probably going to be that final 10 seconds or so where it feels like it's just meandering a bit and then immediately twisting into the left-hand turn. It always caught me off guard in not a good way, and I will say this as something that is really amazing about the rest of the ride is everything feels so green. You're in this natural space for most of it, and then right at that final turn, it feels like you go into an industrial park, which always kind of hit me the wrong way. But my favorite moment of the ride overall is kind of tough to choose, to be completely honest with you, but I do think it is that section where you're in that gorge going back and forth over and over again. It's just such a cool visual, especially if the water is running, and it's really become an iconic moment of the ride. If I had to choose a second place, however, I'd probably choose that Heartline roll. Now with all that said, let's go into my ratings overall. I will say I do have an unorthodox rating system if you've never seen one of these reviews. First, I'll give a ski slope rating of how experienced of a rider you should be before checking this out, 2-star ratings for intensity and fun, and of course an overall rating out of 10, at least for my personal rating. I would say honestly with Cheetah Hunt, you could be an intermediate rider for it if you want to check it out. However, I'll probably say it's an experienced rider ride. You should probably ride rides like Cobra's Curse for sure before checking this out, as well as Scorpion to go upside down before checking out Cheetah Hunt potentially, and to also feel some of those more powerful forces. But I would say do not ride Kumba or Montu or Shikra or Iron Gwazi before checking this ride out. Now for a fun rating, I'm gonna say this is genuinely a good 3 or 4-star coaster for fun. It's super fun overall, but I will say it does kind of lose it in moments. Whereas for intensity, I would probably say this is a 3-star ride for intensity overall, with the launch moments being kind of notable in that portion especially. But those breather moments in between the intensity really do help that out a lot. Now for my personal rating, I'm gonna give this ride an 8 out of 10. I think it's a super solid coaster. I don't think it's perfect by any means, but man oh man, it is so fun, and I definitely have to go ride it every time I'm out at Busch Gardens Tampa. 1, because it's so iconic, and 2, it's just a really relaxing and fun ride for me personally after riding as many coasters as I have. And something that I didn't mention earlier is how smooth it is. Because of that smoothness, it makes it even more re-rideable. But with all that said, I wanted to say thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. What do you think of Cheetah Hunt? Let me know down in the comments below. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Let me know. If you want to see more Busch Gardens Tampa reviews as well as plenty of others down the line, make sure to subscribe if you haven't. Thank you all so much again for watching. I really do appreciate it. And until next time, we'll see you on the next ride.